Welcome to the Daily Dev Talk with me, Adrian Nantchev, where we explore and share experiences, stories, and lessons 7 days a week from across the games industry, helping you make the best game you can. Stay tuned for today's episode. Good morning, Overload Nation. Welcome to another episode of the Daily Dev Talk, talking to game developers from across the world to bring you experiences, stories, and lessons 7 days a week. Today, I'm joined with Daniele Giardini from his studio, Giant, to talk about his main game, GoScurry. Daniele, tell us about yourself first and how you got into the industry.
Hello. Could you repeat the question, please?
How did you get into the games industry, Daniele?
I actually I was working with interactivity since a long time, like developing touchscreen applications for museums and presentations and stuff like that, TV. And then one day I had to develop an application for a virtual museum, the Kirker Museum, which is Kirker was a famous kind of crazy astronomer, and he built this museum, which is kind of an urban legend because it got lost. And so with a team, we had to rebuild this and make a virtual tour in it. And I started using Unity to make it. And I kind of fell in love with it. I made small games in the past, but then from that point, which is like 4.5 years ago, I decided to push more in the game dev environment.
So it started off almost accidentally.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And how long you been working in the games industry?
4.5 years.
That's not bad at all. So, tell me about your studio, Giant. Is it just you, or how many people, and what's the structure?
It's actually, in theory, the basis, it's just me. But I have a number of friends with which I often work. I often make mini games with them, or I have other projects for bigger games I'm developing. So it's kind of a dynamic studio in a way.
Yeah, cool. Cool. And how many other games have you worked on before?
How many games did I work on?
Yes.
Oh, considering also small games that I did for competitions or for fun, like Ludum Dare, we're talking about, I really don't know, but more than 10 at least.
Cool. That's very good experience.
Yeah, I'm kind of a nerd, so when I get into something, I work really hard.
Yeah, I get you. Well, focus. Follow one course until success.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least until you're happy.
Yeah, cool. So, tell us about GoScurry and what you wanted the player to experience.
Oh, GoScurry was actually, it's like my experience with video games. It was born kind of accidentally because I was working on other games, even seriously for release on mobile, etc. And I was working with another graphic at that time, and we had like a couple of weeks of pause. So in the meantime, I decided I would try and make a runner because I always thought that making more than playing a runner would be fun, and I made GoScurry. And somehow it became a lot more than what I thought it would be. And then I went on developing it more. I contacted Isaac J. Martinson, who is also a game developer who's making Friendbow with his wife Natalia. And he made the music for me. And then after a while now it's on Steam, while the other game I was working on was kind of interrupted.
Cool, cool. So, how did you go about promoting GoScurry? What worked and what didn't work so well?
Well, I have to admit I'm really bad at promoting. Like the only thing I used was Twitter, which is cool for that, but you also have to do a lot more. And I was kind of misfocused on that because at the beginning, one of the reasons why I pushed GoScurry is also that after the first month I had a fully working alpha, and it suddenly got a lot of attention from press and YouTubers, which was totally unexpected because I hadn't publicized it, advertised it at all. It wasn't ready for release until it was a secret release, and I thought that at that point that would be enough. Instead, no. So I used Twitter, and then I also made a mess because not really for me. I made a very important thing is YouTubers like you for marketing a game. But then we had a problem when the Steam release came out with music copyrights because exactly musicians had his music. He was selling his music also on another website, and that website decided to block every trailer or every gameplay that supported GoScurry's music. So it was kind of a mess. Nothing went well on that.
You said that after 5 months, it got a lot of press and YouTuber attention.
After 1 month.
1 month. Was that purely just being on Steam?
No, it got on Steam a lot later. That was purely because I posted it on IndieDB, and somehow first Indie Static got noticed it, wrote an article on it, and then other magazines wrote about it. There was even Nerdcubed who made who played it. So it got a lot of attention at the time, but it was too soon. I wasn't ready to release it yet. It was just an alpha. And so it was freely playable online at that time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm curious then, how did you go about funding the game?
Sweat. I considered that it was a side project. I had no funding at all. I worked on it like crazy, but it was all sweat and personal funding. Even for Isaac, the musician, who didn't see a dime until we started sharing the outcome of selling the game.
Okay, interesting. Wow, sounds very makeshift in a way.
Exactly.
So I'm curious then, what was cut from the game and why?
What was?
What was cut from the game?
There was a couple of things that were cut. Initially, right now, GoScurry, there are various modes, but basically you run on this road that continuously forms in front of you, so you don't know exactly where you will have to go until a couple seconds before you actually have to take your turn. And initially there was also a boss mode where you would sometimes after a given amount of running, you would fight a boss and all the gameplay mechanics would change. And there was also a betting system in a way which was related to a story in the game, because I personally love stories, so that's a thing I always miss. But I decided to cut them because actually sometimes you have to know where a game has to stop and where instead you can do more for it. In this case, GoScurry is purely a rhythm racing game, and adding more to it would make it maybe a little redundant. So that's why I cut them. But I still am working instead on the so-called puke mode, which I'm making just for fun, which will be a simpler and different and kind of crazy mode instead.
Interesting. So a lot has been removed, but there's more stuff to come.
What?
A lot has been removed, but there's a lot more stuff to come.
Actually, a lot has been removed, but these were, I have to say that these were all ideas that came after I completed the game. So that's another thing that should tell you, wait, you shouldn't put these things in because those were not original ideas. And what has to come, the puke mode, I wouldn't call it a lot. It's a divertissement, something that will be there just for fun.
Okay. So what was the biggest thing that you learned while working on the game?
Well, first of all, that I suck at marketing and that I have to get better. And also I learned a lot about developing the reactions of your engine, because for GoScurry I didn't use a custom physics engine or something like that, but I created mine. And I learned a lot also about minimalist 3D. I personally don't like 3D, and I'm both a coder and a graphic, but I usually work with 2D graphics because I actually don't like 3D. But I decided to do GoScurry in 3D exactly because I don't like 3D. So, sometimes you want to try and do something that you hate. And I came out with something now that I like, which is a minimalist approach to 3D, which is also very trendy right now. It wasn't that trendy, I think, when I started it. And so I learned a lot about 3D, custom physics engines, and the importance of music for a game. That is another big thing I learned, because when Isaac made the first track for GoScurry, I'm a total fan of Isaac, the musician. That completely changed the whole approach to the game. It made it much better.
And you touched on it a little bit earlier, but you mentioned that the audio was banned because the audio in the game was copyrighted or something of the sort. The game was inaccessible on certain websites.
Yes, that was a problem with CD Baby. I don't know if you know it.
No.
CD Baby is like YouTube. You sell your music there, and practically Isaac was selling GoScurry's music there, as on YouTube, as on iTunes and other websites. But CD Baby has an engine that practically it goes checking around for YouTube videos that use music that they're selling and blocks them. Isaac actually told them not to block it, because obviously it's also his game, so he didn't want videos to be blocked. But they kind of messed us up, because first of all they said it would take 40 days to unblock the block. Then after 30 days they finally unblocked it, but they lied to us, meaning that they didn't really unblock it. So when we finally released the game, we ended up discovering that our YouTube videos were still blocked, and they still were for at least 20 days after the release, which are the most important days for a release. Now there's no problem anymore, but we were pretty angry at the time. I even wrote a blog on Steam telling them very gently to you know what, I can't swear, so I won't say it. But
So would you consider that was the worst thing that happened while working on the game?
yeah, definitely.
Interesting. So even though you had the artist, the musician, the website still blocked the videos.
Exactly. Even though the artist was telling them, look, this music is mine, I want it to be free on YouTube, especially for this game, they just didn't care. They kind of took possession of his stuff and didn't release it for a lot of time. And also the bad thing was that they on their website they showed that it was released, but it wasn't really. And I have to make a parenthesis here. I'm sorry, but I was really angry with this CD Baby. I'm also a website developer, so I know that some things can take long, but requiring 40 days to check an option on your website, because that was an option, is really incredible.
What happened in the end? Was the videos unblocked now?
Yes, in the end they finally gave up.
Oh, they finally gave up?
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, right. So, what was the best game dev purchase you made? Whether it was a software license, a top quality piece of hardware or equipment, or simply a comfortable chair and a good desk?
Oh, I would love to get a comfortable chair, but I still didn't. But Unity, indeed, it was Unity, the engine, which I used to develop the game.
Okay. So I'm also curious, what game development related book, lecture, or learning resource can you recommend?
Oh, I can't really recommend. I have an approach to learning, which is just grab the software, start digging into it, check the help files. Unity has decent help files. And I don't read game dev books. So I really don't know what to recommend. But I know that there are a lot of beautiful websites for that around. I just...
So essentially jump into the software and see what happens
Exactly.
and where you go. Exactly.
Okay. Which in the end, it's actually a slower process, but in the end, it helps you more, because, I mean, you have to know coding and stuff like that already. But in the end, it's a little slower, but it allows you to get to know the inner workings of the engine better. I'm not saying it's the best way to do it. I'm just saying it's my way.
I get you. So, why isn't you not read any books at all related to game design?
I used to read books about coding in the past, but I don't know. Now I just prefer this approach. I love reading. I'm a crazy reader, but I prefer to read other stuff. I don't like to stay. I prefer to do something for what it concerns coding and game development, etc., more than reading it. And again, I'm not saying it's the best approach.
It's your approach. That's what matters.
Exactly. Or I also play games. And try to deduce everything I can from.
Yes, yeah, I understand that. So, if you wouldn't play your game, then you wouldn't pay for your game.
Exactly. That's absolutely true. I have kind of there's another friend, Pietro Polsinelli, with which we have these chats sometimes about game design, etc., on his website. And we both agree that I have kind of a romantic approach to game design. I believe that it's one of the possible approaches, but it's an interesting one that being able to get to know an engine and to get to know game design by experience and by also the feelings and the romantic logic that you get by analyzing something yourself is more fun than reading about it, and you can discover more peculiar things also.
Interesting, a romantic logic. Interesting way of putting it. So I'm curious then, like an Evernote or a Trello, do you have a useful or productivity enhancing software, app, extension, or website worth sharing?
I would totally say Trello, but you just said it. I love
Okay.
Trello and I use that a lot. We just discovered with a team I'm working on Slacker, which is kind of a productive or as a team tool where you can work in a rough way and write to each other. But I'm still not sure if it's really good. Another member, Pietro, of the team loves it, so it might be worth trying it.
Oh, interesting. So, Daniela, what advice can you give to aspiring game developers, small indie studios, and people trying to get to where you are today?
Well, first of all, I would say be prepared to work like crazy because that's the first thing to get good at any job. And then another important thing is I think for games is depth. So whatever you read, again, reading is a very important thing. Do it. I don't do it, but because I'm silly. But whatever you read, don't take any advice as it is. Always try to. I always tell everybody, always try to do your thing, which means knowing exactly what is what are the grounds on which you're building, but then try to build something that has never been built before, because that's how you make not only an original game, but you also put your personality in it, and that can distinguish it and be a good thing both for yourself, then eventually economically.
So build it yourself and build it your way.
Exactly, and also know yourself. Like another important thing is know where your limits are. You always have to go beyond your limits, but you have to know where they are so you don't just strive away from them and then get completely lost in the woods.
I get you. So, what is next for you, and what's the best way to contact you?
Next for me is we are Musli and Pietro Polsinelli. We're in the final stages of a UNESCO contest about making a game about sustainable development. And if this goes on, that is probably what is next for me. Otherwise, I have various side projects that I'm working on, all for games, with various teams and friends. And I'm really not sure at this time what truly will come next. The best way of contacting me is by my website on the About page. www.demigiant.com.
Demigiant.com. Okay, cool. So, Daniela, it appears that we're out of time for this episode of the Daily Dev Talk. Some really cool experiences here, especially with CD Baby and the music. They blocked it, even though it belonged to a colleague, an artist, a musician of yours. And Unity, that you love Unity. But I love the bit, especially about you saying know your limits, so you know how to surpass them.
Exactly.
And get out of comfort zone. Exactly.
That's great.
So I wish you well on this UNESCO venture.
Thank you.
On sustainable development. So stay tuned, Overload Nation. More videos to come.
And it was a pleasure, and thanks to you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Daily Dev Talk with me, Adrian Nantchev. If you are a game developer that wants to get your name and game out there and to share your experiences and stories, or you have feedback or opinions of the show, then contact me at info@gameoverload.co.uk. That's info@gameoverload.co.uk. Stay tuned for tomorrow's episode, more to come.